It's 11:42 p.m., and suddenly, you want to change your life. Wake up early, go to the gym, fix your sleep, start that project, eat better, be the person you keep describing to yourself. At night, you're clear, focused, certain. This is the version of you that has everything figured out. The one who sees the problem, knows the solution, and feels ready to execute. This version shows up reliably. After 10 p.m., when the day is done and the world goes quiet. But during the day, you weren't this person. You were tired, reactive, behind on things you meant to handle. You didn't feel powerful. You felt managed by the schedule, the messages, the small frictions that accumulated before you'd even had time to think. The ambition wasn't there. The clarity wasn't there. Now it is. No notifications pulling at you. No one expecting a response. No decisions queued up demanding your attention. Just space. And in that space, something opens. You open your Notes app, new routine, new wake-up time, new standards for how you operate. You write it down with the kind of specificity that feels different from the vague plans you've made before. This feels structured, considered, real. You tell yourself, tomorrow is different, and you believe it, not performatively. Actually, that belief feels indistinguishable from conviction. That's the part worth paying attention to. Here's what's happening beneath the surface. At night, tomorrow has no cost. Psychologists call this temporal discounting, the brain's tendency to assign less weight to future events than present ones, and less emotional reality to things that haven't arrived yet. When something exists in the future, it's abstract. It doesn't carry friction. It doesn't carry the cold floor or the alarm or the weight of a body that hasn't slept enough. Tomorrow's 6 a.m. workout is easy to commit to because it's theoretical. Tomorrow's discipline doesn't require effort right now, so you price it wrong. You overestimate what you'll be willing to do when the moment actually arrives because you're costing it from a state that has none of the relevant friction. Research on prospective memory and self-regulation, including studies from behavioral science labs at major universities, consistently shows that people predict higher future motivation than they actually experience, particularly when planning occurs in low-demand environments. Night is the lowest demand environment in your day. There's a second mechanism layered underneath this one. Optimism. Bias. When you're removed from the active difficulty of the day, you imagine a version of yourself that performs better than your average. More energy, more focus, more follow-through. The morning you're picturing isn't the real morning. It's a projected morning, the ideal version, populated by the clarity you feel right now. You're not picturing the groggy 10 minutes after the alarm, the inbox that's already running, the low-grade resistance that makes every early task feel like it requires negotiation. You're picturing the moment after all of that resolves, the version where you're already in motion, already executing. That version is real, but it's not the version that has to begin. There's also a biological layer that doesn't get enough attention. Your circadian rhythm doesn't distribute alertness evenly across the day. For many people, cognitive clarity shifts in the late evening, particularly after a day that was mentally fragmented and overstimulating. You feel sharper at night, not because you've become more disciplined. You feel sharper because the environment has cleared. Fewer inputs, fewer interruptions. Your brain is finally operating with uninterrupted bandwidth for the first time since morning. That quiet is real. That cognitive clarity is real. But it isn't transformation. It's the absence of noise. And in that absence, ambition can finally hear itself. By 12:18 a.m., the plan is finalized. You feel something close to pride, a sense of having addressed something that needed addressing. You go to sleep with a clear image of tomorrow's version of you executing the plan cleanly. The feeling is genuine. The intention is genuine. The problem is what happens when you wake up. Morning arrives. The alarm goes off. And the certainty is gone. Not because you lied to yourself. Not because you're incapable. Because the version of you that's now awake is operating under completely different conditions. Lower dopamine levels in the early morning. Higher sleep pressure if you went to bed late. The immediate physical reality of getting up before your body has warmed to the day. Temporal discounting reverses. The cost of the plan, which was theoretical last night, is now concrete and immediate. The effort feels expensive. The comfort of staying still feels urgent. The plan from last night feels like it was made by someone with more resources than you currently have. And in a way, it was. This is the split you don't fully acknowledge. Night you is visionary. Morning you is operational. Night you builds the plan in favorable conditions. Morning you has to execute it in unfavorable ones. Night you commits. Morning you renegotiates. And over time, that gap creates something quiet and corrosive. You start to lose trust in your own motivation. Not because you lack ambition, but because the ambition keeps failing to transfer. You start wondering why you can only feel productive at night. But that's not quite the right question. You're not more productive at night. You're more idealistic at night. Those aren't the same thing. The pattern isn't a discipline problem. It's an alignment problem. You build plans in the state with the least friction and expect them to survive the state with the most. When they don't survive, you interpret that as a character issue. Inconsistency, lack of willpower, a gap between who you are and who you're trying to be. But it's a mismatch problem. Circadian mismatch, emotional mismatch. The conditions under which the commitment was made don't match the conditions under which it has to be kept. And here's where it compounds. Every time the night plan collapses in the morning, self-trust takes a small hit. Not a visible one, not dramatic, just a quiet accumulation of evidence that your future self doesn't do what your present self promises. Eventually, you start hedging. The plans get smaller. The commitments get softer. You stop fully investing in the night vision because somewhere in the background, you already know how the morning tends to go. You don't lose ambition suddenly. You lose it incrementally as your future self stops feeling like someone you can rely on. Motivation becomes a nighttime emotion instead of a daytime behavior. And the distance between those two things keeps widening. Tonight, you'll probably feel it again. That surge. That version of you who sees everything clearly and believes the morning can actually be different. The question isn't whether that feeling is real. It is real. The clarity is real. The intention is real. The question is whether the plan is built for the version of you who has to execute it, or only for the version of you who conceived it. Because this isn't the only place where future you feels stronger than present you. Different behavior. Same gap, same night, but that's another night.